Hi, so this is Linda Connelly doing another oral history interview for the oral history project here in Hopkinton, Massachusetts for the 300th anniversary coming up. And this is part 2 for Rick Macmillan. He felt he had some other additional stories, things that he remembered about Hopkinton that came to his mind after we put the camera off, or maybe because he was a little tired, but he had some notes to make to our earlier conversation.
Well, I remembered, and I didn't talk about the things that we did at the town hall and all the Main Street activities when I was growing up. The town hall used to be kind of a...
So again, tell us what years, so people remember.
It would be late 50s, early 60s. There used to be magic shows up there. Amateur shows up on the second floor of Town Hall. We used to sit up on the balcony sometimes and watch the shows and so forth. And occasionally they'd have movies up there. I'd watch the movies. And then we started when I was in, I think it was junior high. They had ballroom dance classes up there. And we used to go up to the second floor and have the ballroom dancing and hope we'd get out before Brown and Smith's or the drugstore closed, because you could get down and get a ice cream soda or whatever. But that was a big activity.
The ballroom dancing?
Yes. And they also had square dance lessons up there. We used to go in, a woman from Hayden Row, it was Macmillan, used to do square dance lessons after school, one day a week, and that was up in the second floor of the town hall as well. So the town hall there was a lot of activity, a lot going on up there, and we'd meet up there and then go to the different soda fountains in town, Brown and Smith's. Murphy's used to close relatively early, but when the new drugstore opened up down the bottom of the hill, we used to get out there.
Now, which was Murphy's again?
Murphy's was the Rexall drugstore.
Okay.
And it was right up near the town hall. It's where the photographer is now, Falcione's place. It's the Murphy's drugstore in there. So. And then there used to be a lot of activities at what was then the Congregational Church, the big white church at the top of the Main Street Hill.
There's now the Korean Presbyterian, I think.
Yes.
Is what it is. Yeah.
They had a hall downstairs. There were dances there, teen canteen, once a week, Saturday nights. And there used to be shows in there as well. The Boy Scouts used to have Strawberry Festival in there. And the church put on a church Christmas Bazaar, Christmas fair every year as well. We'd walk there and eat. And St. Paul's Church across the street used to have a bazaar, and they'd have dinners and so forth over there.
So that's the church that's now part of the library.
Yeah.
Right. And, which church did you go to?
St. Paul's Church,
Okay.
the Episcopal Church,
Okay.
which I can remember when it became part of the library and so forth. I used to mow the lawn there. I used to ring the chimes there every night from 6 to 6:15 and so forth. And then the Common, we used to spend a lot of time in the Common. There used to be ham and bean suppers on the Common occasionally, chicken barbecues on the Common. Kiwanis used to have their Kids' Day on the Common. And we used to play, occasionally we'd play softball or something.
So who organized these, the bean supper? Is that just people?
I think the fire department did some of the suppers up there, and some of the others, I'm not sure if it was what organizations it was. But Kiwanis was very active at the time. They did the Kids' Day and so forth, so we used to spend a lot of time at the Common, and there was a lot going on.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And then, of course, the building that's now 1 Ash Street, the old community building, we used to go over and play basketball in the gymnasium there, and so forth, before they put the second floor in. And so we used to spend a lot of time over there. We used to have some gym classes there, going to center school, and whatnot.
And that was a schoolhouse way back in the
Yes.
beginning. Yeah,
Yeah.
there are photographs of that.
And they had a fire at the center school back in the 50s, and they had to have some classes both at the community building, now 1 Ash Street, and at the town hall for a few months while they get the classrooms repaired at center school. So we used to do a lot on Main Street. Behind Brown and Smith's store, behind the town hall, it was all woods. Used to be trails through there. We used to ride bikes all around in there before it became cleared out and became a parking lot and so forth. And down on Main Street, again, I think I mentioned before that we used to congregate there at night in front of the post office on Main Street, and had some pretty good games of hide and seek and so forth, because there was a couple of street lights and so forth.
It sounds like a really good childhood.
It
Yeah.
was.
Yeah, it sounds like a
It
terrific
was
childhood.
place to grow up and so forth. And we'd know if we were getting too loud or if it was getting too late. There was a blue light on the corner of the old car barn that used to flash when the police phone rang. So if we saw that flashing, we'd know that either somebody was reporting an accident someplace, or they were complaining about the kids making too much noise in the center of town.
Wow.
So we kind of go and hide for a little while until it calmed down. So, but those were just some of the things I thought about that it was great growing up in the center of town, and we had a lot of things to do.
Did you want to talk about, I mean, I'm just throwing this out, but you mentioned the marathon before being in the center of town.
Yeah.
And
Well, I do remember when they moved the starting line from down near Western Nurseries up at Lucky Rock. Then they started in the center of town, near the center of town. For a couple of years it started on East Main near Ray Street. Then they decided they'd move it up onto Hayden Row a little bit. That was
the starting line
Late
was on,
60s.
on Hayden Row?
Yeah, they did for 2 or 3 years. They started up on Hayden Row before Church Avenue. And
During the 60s?
Yeah,
thinking?
that would have been the late 60s.
Okay.
And I think the year that Paul Newman filmed the movie about where his wife was in it and so forth, that was one of the years that it started up there on Hayden Row. And then they moved it back down to Main Street.
So that was a big year.
Yeah,
For the-
that
yeah,
was
yeah.
1 year and so forth. So, but I can remember the marathon, the activities, and basically it just started the day of the marathon. It set up some snow fence, put the runners in there, and they'd have their exams and so forth. And then they started moving it up towards the high school, in the gymnasium and so forth.
Yeah, and I mean, I grew up with it too, because I lived along Route 16 in Auburndale, and it was not a particularly huge event.
Yeah, it's
in
become
those
much
days.
bigger.
Yeah, it's been a big change.
I do remember when they first built the what's now the middle school, the new high school. Walter Brown brought the Celtics in to play an exhibition game in the new gymnasium,
Wow.
and that was quite an event. And it was the first year that Bill Russell had played for the Celtics. Bill Russell was there.
So what year approximately?
I'm going to say late 50s, early 60s. I'm not sure of the exact
Russell
date.
was a great man. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And so forth. And they had several of the Celtics come out to play, and they even had some retired members and so forth. That was quite an event. Because it was a new school and so forth. So that was a good event.
Our current middle school.
Yes.
Yeah.
The other thing that went on, there used to be, when I was growing up, the auctions that happened at Hildich's on Cedar Street on Friday nights. They used to gather quite a crowd of people, and they had big auctions there. The house and the barn are gone now. But they had auctions there about every Friday night during the summer.
So that was a family thing? Families would go, or?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah?
Families would go, and the cars were parked all over. They'd have to have policemen directing traffic and so forth. And the auctions were quite an event.
Yeah, Hilditch is a Hopkinton name. That kind of I see quite a bit.
Yeah, Jack Hilditch was chief of police
Okay.
for a number of years, and he and two of his sons were auctioneers. Had a wife that was a teacher. She taught at Center School, and so forth.
So this is kind of before television, and when people would be.
Yeah, television was starting to come out. A couple of gas stations in town sold televisions. So we would go out for a walk at night up to Kenny's station, Grove and Hayden Row, and they'd have a TV going on in the showroom. And Gassett Station in the corner of Grove and Main, they also sold appliances, and they had televisions and so forth. So it used to be good to go around and watch TVs before people bought them and so forth.
Duck in, sit down, and watch a show?
Well, we'd have to stand outside.
Yeah, stand outside.
Stand outside.
I've heard stories from people that I knew about peering in, hiding behind bushes and looking through the window at their neighbor's television sets when they were in.
Yeah. And then there were, of course, television repair was a big thing too.
Yeah.
Several people in town that fixed televisions would come to your house and fix it. I remember Jack Kenner, Al Paradise up on Grove Street, Church Street.
I think Carol Walsh told me her father.
Yes, that was Jack Kenner.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he did television repairs. And Tedeschi up on Grove Street. There were several places that used to do them. And I can remember when the drugstore opened, Eddie Cates put a tube tester in the store. So if your TV was acting up, you could take tubes out of it, go to the drugstore and test them. And if the test showed it was bad, they could sell you a tube, so forth. So that wasn't really a good substitute for the TV repairman, but that was the way things were. And I can remember the milk machine they installed, corner of Main and Cedar Street, in front of what used to be Brown and Smith's store, next to the post office. Coffin's Dairy, I'm not sure where they were from, but they put in an automatic milk machine. One side of it had quarts of milk, and the other side had small chocolate milks. So they used to be fairly popular. People would be able to drive down the main street and get a quart of milk when they needed it. A refrigerated automatic machine, you put the money in.
And that's from local dairy in the town then too, right?
It was, they were competing with the local dairies. The local dairies were Terry's, Connelly's, and so forth. But this was Coffin's Dairy.
Yeah.
And they were from over, I'm not sure if Milford or Medway area or something like that.
Boy, it's different, very different. Yeah.
And the grocery stores on the main street, there were several of them. They closed relatively early at night, so there was some people needed to get a quart of milk or something like that. But I remember when Woods' store in Close was on Main Street, not where they are now, but further up the hill. And then Hughes' store at the top of the hill. McDonough's store was up on Hayden Row and Maple. And then the food freezers at the corner of Main.
See, actually, a lot more little stores than there are now.
Oh, yeah.
There was more going on in the town.
Certainly, yeah.
It's the end of the, it sort of ended that little store era.
Yeah. Well, I think at the time, there weren't as many people that had vehicles that could drive to a supermarket or things such as that.
Well, you wouldn't need to.
No, you could
Why
walk to
would
the
you?
store.
You just
Yeah,
walk and get, you
Yeah.
didn't need to drive, get your milk.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, things were different then. But,
Do you remember the Terry's farm? Can you talk about his farm, the dairy farm? And
I remember the cows in Terry's farm.
So this is, again, this would be Hayden Row Street. I don't know if we talked about this the last one, but Hayden Row Street, where the current high school is located, for
Yeah.
people that don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When they, I remember when they built the high school, the old AA building was up there, and one of the football fields and so forth. And next door was Terry's pasture and Terry's farm. And so I remember it was an active farm, and they had dairy root and so forth. And then further down on Hayden Road was Hughes's barn. Brown's, almost to Granite Street. They had horses and so forth. And then there were other farms down on East Main Street, Raftery's farm. There was some down on Front Street that raised Angus, Black Angus cattle and so forth. Warner's farm down in the Ash Street. They had a lot of horses down there, and so forth.
So that's jobs for kids too, working on farms. Did you ever?
I think a lot of my friends probably ended up working down at Western nurseries, things like that, because they were getting started in Hopkinton at the time and so forth. But yeah, kids that grew up on farms worked hard. And so forth. There were apple orchards in town, things such as that. So there was some farm activity in town. You'd go to visit them and so forth, and then all of a sudden, starting to see them being developed. We didn't think much of it at the time, but
That it was, that you were in the middle of a big transition that wasn't going to be going back
exactly
the other way.
Yeah. So true.
Yeah, I guess the Pratt farm is
Pratt's farm over on Fruit Street was a
something
big
happening
farm.
currently with that.
Yeah. Ladders had quite an operation in the center of Woodville. I'd go visit my friends in Woodville and remember Wells's store where the post office was, and then across the street was Wheeler's store. Wheeler sold just about everything.
And people hung out there, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Wheeler's store and so forth. And Wells's store. I mean, they sold. It was the post office was in there, but it was a grocery store, and you could get ice cream and soda and so forth.
Well, I had a Woodville resident tell me that Woodville people didn't come into Hopkinton very much at all, and that Hopkinton people, center people, pretty much tended not to go to Woodville either. So
Yeah, that was true, I think, at the time.
you're on the border, though. You're kind
Yeah.
of
Well, I can remember I did have classmates who lived in Woodville, so I'd go visit them. And I can remember the Woodville bus leaving, the school and the Woodville bus. But
a little
the people in
separate
Woodville kind of went to Westboro for their
Yep, their fathers
shopping and so
fathers
forth.
worked
Right.
in
They worked over
Westboro,
there,
yeah.
Bay State and those places, and did shopping in Westboro. And then the people in Hopkinton, I think, took the bus to Framingham or drove to Framingham for their shopping and so forth. So I think that was one of the distinctions.
Yeah.
But, I did, like I said, I had classmates from Woodville, so I was able to be included with them and so forth. But it was a different world over there.
Yeah.
So, but, and then I think I mentioned that we used to go swimming over at Sandy Island and helped John Conway build a beach over there. And
Sandy Beach.
Sandy Beach.
Yeah.
And,
On Lake Maspinock, yeah.
and Bridges Grove which was on Maspinock down at West Main Street. We'd swim there. They had a little stand that they sold food from, and they had a raft there that you could go out and jump into the water. We also swam down at the reservoir off the bridge on Cedar Street, and Indian Brook, go through the woods and walk up to the brook and so forth.
Great place to live.
It
Great
was.
place to live.
It was. Yeah, we could walk down the bottom of Cedar Street Hill and pick up cat nine tails that we used to be able to soak in kerosene and use them for torches and so forth. And hanging around at the old car barn, the town barn on the corner of Grove and Main.
Which became Colella's, or the Colella's property, yeah.
Colella's built next to it, and then finally bought, the property from the town. They tore down the car barn, the town barn. And, we used to hang around in there. We used to help some of the old timers throw coal in the boiler and so forth, and help them fill the kerosene lanterns that they used to hang on the backs of the trucks that went out to do snow plowing and
Kerosene
sand.
lanterns on the backs of the trucks.
Yep. Yeah, they had the little sander that would attach to the back of the dump truck, and they'd have to put a guy up in the dump truck to shovel into the sander, but they'd have a little kerosene bomb on the back of it. And we used to fill those, clean them and fill them and so forth. And it was a good place to hang out.
Do you have more memories? Or
I think that's probably
Okay.
about it.
Okay, was
Unless you can think of something.
No, unless you can
Specific,
think of
yeah.
any stories from your father or your grandfather, but again, you're going back so many generations. I wish
Yeah.
I could contact them, ask
Yeah.
them, To me, that's just a really amazing thing. I'm first generation, so I can't imagine being able to ask, my grandfather, what his life was like in the same place where I was growing up,
Yeah.
It's really wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time, and it is changing now,
Yeah.
here in 2014. I hope that some of what feels like somewhat of a rural community, I hope that the tail end of that.
Yeah,
sticks
it's still
around.
a great town. I just
It
hope
is,
that the
it is.
people that move in appreciate the community.
Well, that's
the
part
town.
of why we should have conversations like this, is so people know what it is, and
Yeah.
it's, people have a bigger picture, perspective,
Yeah.
So
It's
there's
helpful
respect
also.
for it, yeah.
Cases, I appreciate the history of it and so forth, and I grow to more appreciate it, as time goes by, as things change and so forth. So. The 300th anniversary will be exciting. I can remember the 250th and the 275th, so the 300th will be, it's a good time for reflection and appreciating the past
Yeah,
and so
yeah,
forth.
yeah.
I hope it's going to be successful.
All right, Rick, well, I want to thank you for speaking with me. So again, today's November 24th, 2014, and we're at the Senior Center. Linda Connelly with Rick Macmillan, has lived, 6 generations more? 6 decades in the town?
Oh, yes, yeah.
Okay, quite a long period of time. Was fire chief for a long time too, so great to talk to you, Rick.
Thank you very
Yep.
much.